Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Conley. I'm the Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent, and I would like to introduce you all to Tara Littlefield, who is the Senior Botanist and Plant Conservation Section Manager for the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. How are you doing, Tara?
I'm doing great.
Doing
Glad to be
great.
on.
Yeah, and Tara and I were speaking just a little bit before, and so she's had an unusual but probably typical morning for a mom and a biologist, and so I thought I would go ahead and get into this, Tara, a little bit and let you get about the things that you have to do. So the first thing I want to know is what do you remember wanting to be when you grew up, like as a little kid or whatever?
Yeah. Um, let's see. So I'm from Hardin County in Kentucky. Um, when I was a really young kid, I don't really remember wanting to be anything when I grew up. It wasn't until I was about middle school or high school that things really, I really started to think about that. And it was kind of the typical things, I wanted to be a doctor. I was really into science. I wanted to be a scientist. So that's kind of what I had thought I wanted to do when I was younger. I kind of I grew up in the country. I've always been kind of a wanderer, and I love the outdoors. So that's always kind of been a hobby of mine. But yeah, when I was younger, I didn't have that. I want to be a botanist.
Right.
My dad was an engineer. A lot of family members were engineers. So I kind of looked up to a lot of higher level jobs, doctors, scientists, engineers, that kind of thing. So
Right.
that's what I remember wanting to be.
Yeah, my first memory of this is what I would like to do when I'm all grown up is I want to be a herpetologist and just love snakes. And one of the very first field guides that I got was the North American reptiles. It was snakes from the Golden Guides, and I still keep it on my shelf and use it occasionally. I think most of the information is probably outdated. So the next question is about your first job, and it's the first job that you actually legitimately had to fill out an application for. And you can talk about jobs before that. I talk about when I was younger, my uncle got me a job at working in tobacco. I didn't have to apply for it. He was just gracious enough to give me a job laboring for him and for his friends. And then, my dad took me and got me a job where I actually had to legitimately fill out an application. Do you remember your first applied job that you?
Yeah. So my first applied job was actually at Waffle House.
Oh, nice.
I was a waitress. I had a lot of waitressing jobs in high school and through college. Worked at bookstores, but yeah, Waffle House. It was actually kind of fun, after school and on weekends I would work there. I'd work, the dinner shift and then a couple different types of shifts on the weekends, and my friends would come and visit me. There was a jukebox that had Patsy Cline and all the different Patsy Cline songs. But there were downtimes too, and I was really into writing in journals and doing my homework. I was always studying or reading about different topics, so I used that job to write and read and catch up on my homework as well when there was nobody to wait on. So Waffle House.
It could take you
I had
places.
a little maroon like half bonnet thing.
Right.
um, it was interesting. I think that the outfits were a little bit different back then. But yeah, so that's and before that I did little babysitting jobs when I was younger than 16. I was 16 when I got that Waffle House job, and I worked there for a couple years. But yeah, I did babysitting and things like that beforehand.
Right.
So.
So for the position that you have now, moving forward a little bit, for the position that you have now, as you transition, out of high school, I want to know a little bit more about your educational background. So, like, your degree and or whatever it is that you know.
Yeah. So my as many people probably in this world, my path wasn't exactly linear. Um, I after college or after high school, I moved to Lexington and went to UK for a year, and then I transferred to Louisville, and I ended up getting a chemistry degree in at U of L. So I have a bachelor's of science in chemistry, emphasizing in biochemistry. And I took the MCATs, and I really still wanted to be a doctor. And so I just didn't exactly know exactly the path that I wanted to take. So I ended up getting into a PhD program for chemistry out west. So I moved out west, and for 2 years I was actually getting a degree in chemistry. Still nothing to do with what I actually ended up doing with my career. So I realized that then, it had been a couple of years, on my own, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what really made me happy. I knew what didn't make me happy was being in a lab, doing work inside. I was always, any chance I could get, I was outside, hiking around, learning. I was always obsessed with plants, actually. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always roaming around, picking flowers. I had all the field guides too. It's just not something that I thought you could have a career in. No one actually told me, yes, you can have a career in studying, plants or in nature. So, yeah, I was confused for many years in undergrad, and when I was getting that PhD, I ended up quitting my PhD program because I was very unhappy, and I knew that that's just not what I was passionate about. And it took another year or so trying to figure out what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I enjoyed hiking around and learning everything that I was seeing. I loved learning about the plants, the animals, the communities that I was looking at. That was just my hobby. At the time, my brother was living in Lexington. I moved back to Kentucky, and he suggested that I move to Lexington and take some post-grad classes in the forestry department. He kind of knew me better than myself at that point, and just kind of suggested that on the side. He knew that I really enjoyed being outdoors, and so I did. I moved to Lexington. I met Dr. Tom Barnes, and I started working for him. I was a field tech for Dr. Barnes, and I traveled around the state with him, and sometimes solo, collecting seeds and then growing native plants for him. And so I learned a lot from him. Then I started working for Mary Arthur, Dr. Arthur,
Mm-hmm.
in the forestry department, and I was a tech for her. So that's so then I got experience just doing field tech jobs, and then I ended up accepting a master's position with Mary, Dr. Arthur, and Dr. Barton. I had co-advisors, and so then that's when I started my master's. So it was in forest ecology, but I did end up using my chemistry degree. I studied carbon and nitrogen cycling in the forests,
Wow.
and I looked at different ages of forests, from clear cuts all the way to old growth, and looked at how carbon and nitrogen cycles in these different systems. And of course, botany was always still a hobby of mine. Everywhere I went, I tried to identify every single thing. I was somewhat obsessive, and that was since I was a kid. I mean, when I was in high school, I had already learned almost all of my trees. Those are just things that I did on the side. Yeah, so when I was getting my master's, my actual thesis, was carbon and nitrogen cycling, but I did a flora of all of my sites on the side just because I knew that's just something that I really enjoyed doing. I mean, it was just something I really enjoyed. So I was nearing the end of my master's in Lexington, and a position came up for a field botany position working for state government. And I applied. I was actually still not done with my master's. And that was with the, at the time, our agency was called the Kentucky State Nature Preserves Commission. And so my first like professional job that used my degrees in schooling and education was for the same place that I work for now. But it was a little bit different position then. I was just a straight field botanist. So yeah, that was kind of my path. It wasn't exactly linear. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. If I would have had maybe a biology mentor when I was younger, even a lot of the biology classes I had, you know, at UK and U of L were for undergrads. It was very, you know, pre-med. You know, all of the biology degrees were still really heavy in pre-medicine, you know, kind of steering you towards that path. So yeah, so that's my schooling path.
Ours is, I guess, very similar. I took came back and through and everywhere else to try and do my own as well. So tell me about the work that you do now for the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves, and what goes on at your job or in your career.
Yeah, so I work for the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. We're a state organization. So we're under the Energy and Environment Cabinet. So there's kind of two main parts to the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. One part is that we're the Natural Heritage Program for the state. And for those of you who don't know what natural heritage programs are, they're the, every state has one. They're the kind of the housing, the state database for all of the natural heritage plant and animal data. So we serve as the clearinghouse for information on plants and animals, specializing in rare plants and animals. We also compile information on natural communities across the state. And our natural heritage database is used not just for gathering information. We are heavily involved in a lot of environmental review processes. So a lot of our data is directly involved in planning across the state to mitigate impacts. You know, if there's a road going in or a development, you know, they check our database to make sure that there's no federally listed species that are going to be impacted, things like that. Also, a big part of our natural heritage program is, you know, we gather a lot of data on the distribution, the conservation of plants and animals across the state. But it's not just within Kentucky that our data is used. This data then gets fed into our parent organization called NatureServe. It's across North America. And the information that we collect on the plants and animals gets fed into that larger network, so that we can assess not only how these plants and animals are doing within our state, but across its entire range. So you know, we're the ones that set state listings, state ranks, global ranks, things like that. The second part of the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves is we're also the Natural Areas Program. And so we have a system of state nature preserves across the state. And a lot of our nature preserves that we purchase and manage, the reason why we protect those areas is because they have rare species on them, you know, intact, high quality natural communities. So that's our system of state nature preserves. Under our natural areas programs, we also administer the Wild Rivers program. And Kentucky has 9 wild rivers, designated wild rivers. So we have some oversight within that program. And then we also administer the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund program. And that is an extremely important program for the state. That is what purchases all of the state conservation lands. And so we work with a lot of different partners through that program and through all of our programs, actually. We work with experts, land managers, all kinds of professionals, academics, all across the state to accomplish many different missions. So specifically my position, so I'm the plant person at Nature Preserves. I've been working there for about 16 years. Originally, I'd mentioned I was a field botanist. So the first part of my career, I spent the majority of my time outdoors surveying for plants. I like to say I chased a lot of dots, a lot of old records. I'd chase down old records and herbariums and try to go find them. I'd study a lot of maps and try to, find particular species that I was doing status surveys on. All of those lands that are purchased through our Heritage Land Conservation Fund have to have inventories. So we did, straight up inventories. So it's a lot of surveys, monitoring, kind of direct management of those rare plants. So that's what I spent the first part of my career doing. And then, of course, if you've spent a lot of time in a particular position, sometimes they can evolve over time. And over the past 5 years in particular, there's been a lot of changes within our organization. We did absorb that Wild Rivers and Heritage Land Conservation Fund program. So that was actually a relatively new programs for nature reserves. So over the past couple of years, I was able to, of course, with our director and different partners, we were able to create a plant conservation section. So prior to that, we had 2 botanists when I first started working there, and then it dwindled down to 1 botanist, which was me. But for the past 5 years, we were able to form a new section, and we've pulled in several new botanists, and that's been really exciting to watch our botany program and our plant conservation efforts grow at Nature Preserves over the past couple of years. So that's been really exciting. A lot of new staff have been pulled on. So yeah, that's kind of the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know that I'm a huge fan of all the work that you all do as far as plants, and I regularly harass you via Facebook Messenger about something that I found, or numbers of things that I found, or just being a complete nuisance. So I hope that you don't mind that too much. So my next question is about the challenges of your career. What are some of the challenges of your career?
Yeah. Let's see. I think, a lot of the folks that are in this line of work are in it because we're so passionate about what we do. We truly love like these species that we're working with, and the natural areas that we're trying to protect. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had over the years working in this field has been trying to accomplish these really big missions. Okay, we're gonna protect these really important areas in Kentucky that are really diverse. They have these really rare and unique species. The biggest challenge is trying to accomplish those types of missions with few resources and not many staff. So the state is very large. There's so much work to be done in order to truly protect some of these last great places in Kentucky. So that's a huge challenge. It kind of, if you don't have too many resources, if your staff is not we don't have an army of folks across the state, you really have to think outside the box in terms of how to accomplish some of these big missions, really. So that's been one of the biggest challenges. It's not impossible, but you know, it takes a lot of strategic planning and prioritization in order to connect all the different dots and 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 um, and to accomplish those missions. So.
Yeah. So what about the joys of your career?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same. It's kind of the second part of that. You know,
Right.
when you do get to uh, protect a particular tract of land that is gonna, you know, save a species. That is it's it's really rewarding. I've been through not that many of those types of projects where you have a target species or community that's really rare. You're trying to protect it. It's the threats are great. It's going to be developed. You're trying to get money to buy the property. You're working with landowners to make sure these things don't disappear. There's sometimes there's successes. There's some failures, but when you get those successes and you get to actually turn a particular area into a nature preserve where you get a really good working relationship with a landowner that has also the same goals, and everyone works together to do these things, that's definitely the biggest highlight of this career.
So, and I've got two more questions. For someone who is interested in your career field, and you know, of course, you talked about like that you didn't take this linear path to get to where you are. So, what would be a way that somebody who is interested in your career or the things that you do, how could they do that in a little bit more straight line, or that they could prepare ahead of time? So you said that, you know, when you were in high school you learned all of your trees, and so are there ways that people could do things ahead of time in order to prepare for a career in what you do?
Yeah, so specifically with botany, I mean, if uh if somebody is interested in botany and you know, identifying plants, taxonomy, uh, land protection, and any of those types of topics, if they're interested in that, I think one of the biggest things, besides for just seeking out knowledge, of course, that's kind of your first step. Well, your first step is what makes you happy.
Yeah.
What truly, you know, sparks that passion in you when you do those things. And so sometimes, I mean, there's some people that never really find exactly what makes them happy, and passionate, and 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 so, yeah, just trying to figure out exactly what you really want to do. Once you find out what you want to do, try to, you know, do the research, get the books, you know, reach out to professionals or you know, different folks in that field, and learn from others, ask questions. I think that's probably the biggest thing, you know, seek knowledge and reach out, because you can learn a lot from different people that have already been through that whole entire process. That's one thing, you know, that I wish I could have done more when I was younger. But you know, I had the reason why I learned all my trees was, you know, my older brother was in Boy Scouts, so he knew all his trees. So we went hiking around, and he taught me all my trees. You know, so you can get that kind of knowledge in different ways. But yeah, just research. I can't emphasize enough. You know, if you're interested in a topic, read as much as you can about that topic. You know, that seeking of knowledge is so important. But yeah, reach out to folks. Uh, you definitely you definitely don't want to feel embarrassed or, you know, shy, or you know, just get that stuff out of your brain. Just reach out to folks and learn from others.
So the last question I have, as a youth development professional and somebody who works with young people all from 5 all the way up to 19 years old, um, you know, if when they see this, I mean, how can kids be involved in your field? I mean, are there volunteer opportunities, or are there programmatic opportunities that exist within your field, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we have volunteer programs within the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves, and then also at Kentucky Native Plant Society. So I'm also heavily involved in the Kentucky Native Plant Society as well. And yeah, we've got a lot of volunteer projects that folks can reach out to us and join. The easiest way to do it is to join some of our iNaturalist projects, and 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 just go out in nature and try to identify as much of these different organisms as you can, and upload them into our iNaturalist projects. We've got different projects going on where we've got roadside native plant inventory projects. We've got different bio blitzes going on at some of our nature preserves. So that's probably the easiest way to get involved, is to just reach out to us through those different projects. More formally, you can join our volunteer program. You can become a preserve monitor. You can do species monitoring for us. We do a lot of natural areas management, so we always need help doing different management on our different preserves. A lot of that is invasive species management. So yeah, there's all kinds of different projects that you can reach out to us and get involved. So yeah, that's.
Well, that's like I said, I'm always impressed by the work that you do and your team does, and the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. We have 3 nature preserves here in Garrett County. And my wife and daughter, we regularly get out and explore those places. So thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for taking time to sit down with me. I'm not going to keep you any longer, because I'm sure it's brisk where you're at, and so especially in the company that you're keeping currently, where you're at. But I will let you go. My name is Eric Comley. I'm the Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent, and thank you to Tara Littlefield, Senior Botanist and Plant Conservation Section Manager for the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. Thank you so much, Tara.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Bye-bye.